What is up, you guys, and welcome back to the 98 English course. In today's recording, we're going to be going over Unit 5, the physical world, okay? So, as always, we start with the key vocabulary, and then we move on to the listening. Here, have a listen. Above, ago, away from, behind, below, between, bottom, deep, depth, the earth, east, far, hemisphere, in front of, in the center, in the corner, into, Jupiter, left, length, liquid, Mars, Mercury, the moon, near, Neptune, next to, north, old, out of, over, planet, right, rock, Saturn, the solar system, solid, south, the sun, top, towards, under, Uranus, Venus, west, wide, width, young. Okay, you guys, now let's move on to listening. Here, let's take a look at this picture. So obviously, this is our solar system. Here we have the sun, the main star in our solar system, and here we have the planets in perfect order, right? So we have Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, right? And after that, I think there was a debate between scientists about Pluto being the ninth planet or not. Okay, so here we have exercise A. Let's take a look at figure 1. So here we have the Earth, okay, obviously our planet, and we have, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but we actually have different layers in our planet. So we have the crust, right, and then we have the mantle, outer core, and finally inner core. And the deeper you go, you guys, the hotter it gets, right? So the deeper you go, the hotter it gets temperature-wise, okay? So now let's open exercise A here. Here we have, you're going to hear a lecture about the Earth and the solar system. How will the lecturer pronounce the names of the planets? Okay, so check the names of these planets for yourself.
56. Unit 5. The Physical World. Lesson 1. Listening. Exercise A2. Listen and check.
Planets:
Jupiter,
Mars,
Mercury,
Neptune,
Saturn,
the Earth,
the Sun,
Uranus,
Venus.
Alright, now let's move on. Here we have, which part of the solar system is the speaker talking about? So for example, it's next to the sun, and we're obviously going to be saying what planet is next to the sun, okay? So listen to it first, and then we might play it again. Here.
57. Exercise A3. Listen and point to the item in each case.
1,
it's next to the sun,
2,
it's between Mercury and the Earth,
3,
it's next to Neptune,
4,
it's between Jupiter and Uranus,
5,
it's between Mars and Venus.
Alright, so I hope you guys got an idea of what we have to do. So we're gonna have, basically an information about a planet, and we have to say the name of said planet. Okay? So now let's have a listen, but I'll be saying the names of the planets as we go. Here we go.
57. Listen and point to the item in each case.
1,
It's next to the sun.
Mercury,
2,
It's between Mercury and the Earth.
Venus,
3,
It's next to Neptune.
Uranus,
4,
It's between Jupiter and Uranus.
Saturn,
5,
It's between Mars and Venus.
the Earth. Okay, so that's it. Now, listen and complete each sentence with the name from figure 1. Okay, so now we're going to be hearing information about the solar system, and we have to actually complete the sentence with the correct information. So, for example, at the center of the solar system is, and I have to complete the information. So, for example, the sun. If it's other pieces of information, I could probably say Mars and Earth and things of that nature. So now let's have a go. Here we go.
58. Exercise A4. Listen and complete each sentence with a name from figure 1.
1,
At the center of the solar system is
The sun,
the sun.
2,
The nearest planet to the sun is called
Mercury,
Mercury.
3,
The fourth planet from the sun is called
Mars,
Mars.
4,
There is a large planet with rings. It is called
Saturn,
Saturn.
5,
The largest planet in our solar system is
Jupiter,
Jupiter.
6,
The planet between Neptune and Saturn is called
Uranus,
Uranus.
7,
The planet next to Mercury is called
Venus,
Venus.
8,
The smallest planet is called
Mercury.
Mercury.
Okay, now let's move on, you guys. So what do we have here? Okay, before we actually move on to exercise B, let's take a look at skills check 1 here. So, recognizing keywords in the lecture, and we actually talked briefly about this before and how you can recognize keywords in a lecture. And it's actually a must when you go to college or basically in your life, you should be able to recognize when someone is talking, their keywords, what they're talking about, specifically in a lecture here. So, if you get a topic about a lecture, and a set date, you gotta do some research so you have an idea of what the professor or teacher is saying when he finally starts the lecture, right? You can also check the pronunciation of keywords from the topic that you're going to be, or the professor is going to be talking about, okay? You can also have a guess at what keywords are during the lecture by the stressed syllable. You guys remember the stressed syllables, different verbs, right? And also different nouns and adjectives, right? So the pronunciation of key sounds, it could make or break a keyword, right? So saying Mercury is nothing, but if I say Mercury, if I give a certain stress to that word, that probably means it's a keyword. It hints to something else, right? Or it hints to an extra piece of information, for example. Person and person, right? Jupiter and Jupiter, okay? June and June, right? That stress can make all the difference, okay? So now let's go to exercise B. Look at figure 2. Let me actually open this so you guys can get a better view. Here we have, how will the lecturer pronounce each keyword? So each keyword here he's referring to this diagram right here. So figure 2, the Earth's core, right? So we have crust, mantle, outer core, and inner core, right? Now let's have a listen at how the lecturer is going to pronounce each keyword. Okay, have a listen.
59. Exercise B2. Listen and check.
The earth. The crust. The inner core. The mantle. The outer core.
Alright, so this is how the lecturer pronounces those keywords. Alright, so now let's go to number 3. Which part of the Earth's core is the speaker talking about? Okay, listen and point to the part in each case. Okay, so let's have an example of what to expect right here. So in the audio, we're going to hear stuff such as, it's at the center of the Earth, and we're going to have to say, what is it? So is it the inner core, outer core, mantle, or crust? Okay, so I'm going to be, just like we did in exercise A, I'm going to be speaking over the audio without pausing. Alright, here we go, you guys.
60. Exercise B3. Listen and point to the part in each case.
It's at the center of the earth.
The inner core,
It's above the inner core.
the outer core,
It's below the crust.
the mantle,
It's between the inner core and the mantle.
the outer core. Alright, so that's it. Simple stuff. Let's move to number 4. Listen and complete each sentence with a word or phrase from figure 2. Okay, so just like the previous audio and exercise A, we're going to be listening and completing each sentence with the correct piece of information. So here's an example. The top part of the earth is called, and we're going to have to answer, the crust. Okay, so here we go.
61. Exercise B4. Listen and complete each sentence with a word or phrase from figure 2.
1.
The top part of the earth is called
The crust,
the crust.
2.
The center of the earth is called
the inner core,
the inner core.
3.
Next to the inner core is the
outer core,
outer core.
4.
Between the crust and the outer core, there is a layer called
the mantle,
the mantle.
5.
The mantle is above the
outer core,
outer core.
6.
The mantle is below the
crust.
crust.
Alright, so pretty similar exercise, you guys. Now let's move on. Okay, so here we have superlative adjectives. Okay, so we talked before about comparative adjectives. Now we're going to be talking about superlative adjectives. Okay, so how do we turn adjectives into superlative adjectives? So how do we do that is by making one-syllable adjectives into superlatives with adding est, or by adding est and using the before it. So for example, I don't say small planet in the solar system is called Mercury. Obviously Mercury is the smallest planet, so I say the smallest, right? I have to use the and small and est at the end. He is the smallest, the fastest, the strongest, right? The slowest. All of these are considered superlative adjectives. Okay, so the smallest planet in the solar system is called Mercury. The inner core is the deepest part of the earth. Okay, so all of these are called superlative adjectives. Now let's move on. What do we have here? Oh look, so here we have 4 pictures or 4 figures, right, telling us how the process of a moon eclipse and a sun eclipse goes, right? So here we have the moon in front of the sun, blocking some of that light for the, for some people living on Earth, right? And here we have another eclipse where you can't see the moon at all, right? But because obviously, if you guys didn't know, the moon gets its light from the sun. It doesn't have its own light, okay? So now, Here he wants us to listen to the introduction to the lecture. Right, let me actually open this. Here we have, what is the lecturer going to talk about? Okay, you guys, so I want you guys to listen to this carefully and write down what you think the lecturer is going to talk about. Here we go.
63. Exercise D. Listen to the introduction to the lecture.
Today, we're going to talk about the solar system. In particular, you're going to hear about two natural events in the solar system. First, I'll talk about an eclipse of the sun, and then I'll describe an eclipse of the moon. Don't worry about the word eclipse at the moment. I'll explain it in the lecture.
Okay, so what do you guys think the lecturer is going to talk about in this lecture? That's correct. She's going to talk about eclipses of the sun and the moon, right? So we'll write down eclipses of the sun and the moon. Okay? So that was pretty simple. Let's move on. Here we have exercise E. Listen to the first part of the lecture. Let me open this. Okay. So we're going to be hearing information, and we're going to have to number these information based on it's similar to the audio, the final audio of exercise B and exercise A. We're going to be hearing information and we're going to have to finish it, but instead of saying it out loud, we can just type the numbers down. Okay? So let's have a listen.
64. Exercise E. Listen to the first part of the lecture.
1,
Now, I've given you a couple of photographs and two
Diagrams, right? So we want to complete what she's going to say. So 2 photographs and 2 diagrams. So number 1 will be diagrams. Okay, you guys? This is how this exercise is going to go.
2,
Can you look at the photograph and the diagram on the
left, okay? On the left. We don't have a right, so on the left will be number 2.
3,
What does the photograph?
What does the photograph show? What does the photograph show? That's a question. So number 3 will be show, okay? Get ready for number 4. Here we go.
Well, of course, it shows
It shows, what does it show? It shows the sun, right? You can clearly see the sun. So where's the sun? It shows the sun, okay?
5,
But in front of the sun, we can see part of the
We can see part of the, what can we see? We can see part of the moon, right? So do we have the moon? Yes, we do. 1, 2, 3, 4, and moon will be number 5, okay?
6,
The moon is moving between the earth and the sun. We call this natural event an
Eclipse,
7,
okay? This is called an eclipse, you guys. That is the definition of an eclipse, okay? So number 6 will be an eclipse, all right?
This is an eclipse of the sun. Eclipses of the sun happen every 18 months somewhere on the
earth, right? Because that is the only place where we live in, so it happens on the earth.
8,
But this is not a total eclipse. The moon is not covering the sun.
9,
The moon is actually not covering the sun completely. That's what the missing word was. So you can see that people living here don't get sunlight for, I'm guessing, what, a couple seconds, right? That's an eclipse. But, the rest of the world get, sunlight. No difference whatsoever. Okay, so it just happens to different places every 18 months or so. So completely will be number 8. Okay?
Call this kind of eclipse partial from the word
From the word part. So the word partial comes from the word part. Okay, so number 9 is part.
10,
on average. total eclipses only happen once every 100
Happen every 100 years, okay? Because they don't happen. I don't see anything else. No days, no months. So number 10 will be years, okay?
11.
Look at the diagram under the
Diagram under the photograph, right? So because here we have the diagrams under the photographs, so 11 will be photograph.
12.
The red arrows show the way that the moon
moves. Number 12. And here you can see the arrows showing the way that the moon moves. Look at it moves anti-clockwise, okay? This is clockwise, this is anti-clockwise. Okay, you guys? So, that was simple. Let's move on. Or actually, before I do that, let's have a listen again, just to check our answers. So I'm not going to be talking here. I want you guys to check your answers, and then we'll move on. Here we go. Have a listen.
65. Exercise E2. Listen again to this part and check.
1.
Now, I've given you a couple of photographs and 2 diagrams.
2.
Can you look at the photograph and the diagram on the left?
3.
What does the photograph show?
4.
Well, of course, it shows the sun.
5.
But in front of the sun, we can see part of the moon.
6.
The moon is moving between the earth and the sun. We call this natural event an eclipse.
7.
This is an eclipse of the sun. Eclipses of the sun happen every 18 months somewhere on the earth.
8.
But this is not a total eclipse. The moon is not covering the sun completely.
9.
We call this kind of eclipse partial, from the word part.
10.
On average, total eclipses only happen once every 100 years.
11.
Look at the diagram under the photograph.
12.
The red arrows show the way that the moon moves.
Alright, now let's move on. So here we have exercise F. Look at the second photograph and diagram. What is the lecturer going to say about them? And listen to the second part of the lecture and check your answers. Okay, so let me open this so we can get a better view of what we're going to be doing here. Okay, so we have 2 photographs and 2 diagrams that we just saw. Okay, what is the lecturer going to say about them? Obviously, we know that these are eclipses, right? A full eclipse and a partial eclipse, okay? The sun and the moon. Now, listen to the second part of the lecture and check your answers. Okay, so let's have a listen about what the lecturer is going to say.
66. Exercise F2. Listen to the second part of the lecture and check your answers.
Okay, so that's an eclipse of the sun. Now look at the photograph and the diagram on the right. Okay, everyone got that? Now, this photograph shows an eclipse of the moon. So what's happening here? Well, the Earth is moving between the sun and the moon. On average, 3 eclipses of the moon happen every year somewhere on the Earth. Total eclipses happen nearly as often as partial eclipses. Why do eclipses happen? The answer is simple. They happen because the moon goes round the Earth and the Earth goes round the sun. Sometimes the Earth is between the moon and the sun. We call this an eclipse of the moon. And of course, sometimes the moon is between the sun and the Earth. We call this an eclipse of the sun. Do other planets in our solar system have eclipses?
Okay, so I definitely think that my answer was correct. She did talk about eclipses and how, eclipses happen and they're different types. Okay? So now, before we move to exercise G, here we have prepositions. Now, here we have understanding prepositions and why do we use them. So, we often use prepositions to talk about location and movement, okay? So, when I want to use prepositions, I often use them to talk about the location of a place or something and the movement of something, right? So, for example, the moon is between the sun and the earth. I'm here talking about location of the moon. So, where is the moon? The moon is between the sun and the earth, and obviously between here is the preposition. Okay? But if I say the moon goes round the earth, here I'm not talking about the location of the moon. I'm talking about the movement of the moon, because you guys know the moon doesn't stay in one place. It goes round the earth, right? So now I'm talking about the movement, also where we can use prepositions. So again, we use prepositions for location and movement. Okay? Examples: the moon is between the sun and the earth, and the moon goes round the earth, right? So we just use the diagrams to show position of movement when you're listening to a lecture. Okay, so let me actually open this, you guys, or actually I don't need to open that. Let me just go up top here. So here you guys can see this. Where is the moon? The moon is between the sun and the earth, right? And here, I mean, both of them are correct. The moon goes round the earth, okay? So, simple stuff. Now, let's move on to exercise G. Let me open this. So we have, listen to some sentences about figures 3 and 4. So I'm guessing this and this. Okay, which figure is the speaker talking about in each case? Okay, and here we have an example. The diagram shows an eclipse of the sun, figure 3. Okay, so we're going to be going over figure 3 and figure 4. We're going to be choosing depending on the information in the audio. Okay, you guys? So here we go. Have a listen.
67. Exercise G. Listen to some sentences about figures 3 and 4. Which figure is the speaker talking about in each case?
1.
The diagram shows an eclipse of the sun.
Figure 3.
2.
The diagram shows an eclipse of the moon.
Figure 4.
3.
The moon is between the earth and the sun.
Figure 3.
4.
The moon is in front of the sun.
Figure 3.
5.
The moon is behind the earth.
Figure 4.
6.
The earth is between the sun and the moon.
Figure 4.
7.
The earth is in front of the moon.
Figure 4. Alright, you guys? So this is how it was done. Okay? Now let's move on to speaking. Alright, you guys? Now let's move on to lesson 2, speaking. Here we have exercise A. Study figure 1 opposite. So here's figure 1. We have different continents of the world, and we're going to have to name them, right? So name the continents, and we have an example. Number 1 is Asia. So this right here is Asia, you guys, okay? Number 2, what's number 2, you guys? Number 2 is Africa. That is what Africa looks like on the world map, okay? Then we have number 3. I think number 3 is Oceania. And then we have number 4 is Antarctica. That continent is super cold. And then we have number 5, South America, obviously. Then we have number 6, Europe. Everybody knows Europe. And finally, number 7, North America. Okay? Now, let's move to exercise B. So here we're going to be listening to an introduction of a lecture, right? And we got to complete the introduction after we're done, okay? So I'm going to let you guys listen to it twice, or not twice, once, and then I'll play it again, but I'll be pausing it to write down the missing words. Okay? Here, have a listen.
68. Lesson 2. Speaking. Exercise B. Listen to the start of a lecture. Complete the introduction on the right.
Today, I'm going to talk to you about the history of the continents. I don't mean the human history, I mean the physical history. Where were the continents millions of years ago? According to scientists, they weren't in the same places as today. They were in different places, and they looked very different too.
Alright, so that was the introduction. I hope you were able to get the missing words. Now I'll play it again, but this time I'll be pausing it as we go.
68. Exercise B. Listen to the start of a lecture. Complete the introduction on the right.
Today, I'm going to talk to you about the history of the continents.
Okay, so number 1, today I'm going to talk to you about the history of the continents. Okay, so number 1 is continents.
I don't mean the human history,
I don't mean the human history. Obviously, human history is the history of humans and not the world.
I mean the physical history.
I mean the physical history. And the physical history here means, the history of the continents themselves as rocks, as the earth itself, okay?
Where were the continents millions of years ago?
Okay, so this is a question asking basically something of the past, so we're going to use ago. So, where were the continents millions of years ago?
According to scientists, they weren't in the same places as today.
According to scientists, they weren't in the same places as today.
They were in different places.
They were in different places.
And they looked very different too.
And they looked very different too. Okay, so that was the introduction. You guys, do we have anything else? Okay, so that's it. Okay, so this was the introduction of the lecture. Okay, now here we have exercise C. Let me actually open this. Here we have listen to the main part of the lecture and look at figures 2, 3, and 4. So here we have figure 2, 3, and 4, and all of these are continents, but I'm sure they don't look familiar right now, but you guys will understand what these figures actually mean once we start the audio. Okay, so let's listen to the main part of the lecture now. Okay, and we want to write the date for each figure, okay, and add names to the figure as well. So in the audio, we're going to be hearing dates for each figure and names for these continents. Obviously, we're talking millions of years ago. So after the audio, you guys should be able to write the date down. If not, I'll write it down. That's okay. And also, we'll be labeling them as well. Okay, here we go. Have a listen.
69. Exercise C. Listen to the main part of the lecture and look at figures 2, 3, and 4 on the opposite page.
So, we need to go back millions of years. 250 million years ago, in fact. Then, there was only one continent. Scientists called it Pangaea. The word Pangaea means all lands. Look at the figure. It is difficult to see today's continents. You can see this continent went from the north to the south. Around the continent there was one ocean called Panthalassa. This word, of course, means all seas. We now move forward about 50 million years. We are now looking at about 200 million years ago. At this time in the Earth's history, there were two continents. Scientists called the continent in the northern hemisphere Laurasia, and the continent in the southern hemisphere Gondwanaland. That's Laurasia in the north and Gondwanaland in the south. The present continents of Europe, North America and Asia were in Laurasia, and South America, Africa, Oceania and lastly Antarctica were in Gondwanaland. And the subcontinent of India was also in Gondwanaland. And now we have quite a big step forward in time. 85 million years ago, there were at last 7 continents. Look at the figure. You can see Europe and Asia were together in the northeast. Now this is interesting. North America and South America were separate in the west. And you can see Africa was in the centre. Antarctica was below Africa with Australia to the east. Notice that India was a separate continent. It was east of Africa. So the figure is still not the map of the world that we recognise today.
Alright, so that was the audio that we needed to hear. So before moving on, let's hop to figure 2 here. So can you guys tell me the date in which, the continents of the world looked like this? That's correct. That was 250 million years ago. That is a really long time. So 250 million years ago, it was one continent and it was called Pangaea. And translation for that is all lands, right? And it was surrounded by one ocean at the time called Panthalassa. And that was, translation for all seas. So it was basically one continent, right, called Pangaea, and one ocean called Panthalassa, right? And the date was around 250 million years ago. Now, let's move on to figure 3 here. Now, things are kind of starting to take a little bit more shape. So we have in the northern hemisphere, we have Laurasia, right? So this was the northern continent, was called Laurasia. And in the southern hemisphere, the continent was called Gondwanaland, I think. Yeah, Gondwanaland. Yep. So in the north, Laurasia, and in the south, Gondwanaland. All right. And then finally, figure 4. It's still not quite the same world map as today, but now this is where things really started to kind of form into the way that we know and think of when talking about continents. So here you obviously have North America, South America. Obviously things are a little bit different. You guys can see they're not connected yet. So this was around 80 million years ago. Figure 3 was around 200 million years ago. So figure 2, 250 million years ago. Figure 3, 200 million years ago. And finally figure 4 was 80 million years ago. Okay, so figure 4, 80 million years ago, we had North America up here. We had Asia and Europe connected, okay, as one continent. We had Africa. We had South America, not connected to North America. We had Antarctica, Australia, and India, right? So these were the figures, their dates, and names. Okay, you guys? What else do we have? Here we have D. Listen to the last part and look again at figure 4. Okay, so now we're going to be specifically looking at figure 4 while listening to the last part. Okay, here we go.
70. Exercise D. Listen to the last part and look again at figure 4.
So, how did the continents reach their modern position? Well, for the next 50 million years, the continents kept moving. North America moved away from Europe and Asia. It moved to the west. And South America? That continent moved away from Africa to the northwest. Now, can you see Antarctica in the figure? Antarctica moved to the south. Africa, India and Australia moved to the northeast. So all three moved in the same direction. But India kept moving towards Asia. Finally, India crashed into Asia. What happened? Well, something very exciting. The huge Himalayan mountains appeared, with the highest mountain in the world, Mount Everest. The Himalayas are the youngest mountain range on Earth. How can the continents move? Why do they move? Well, the continents are on the crust of the Earth. The crust is solid rock. But, as you know, the crust is on the mantle, and the mantle is liquid rock. The crust moves very, very slowly on top of the mantle, like a stick or piece of wood on water.
Alright, so that was the last part of the lecture, right? So here we have 1. Label the continents, we already did that. Show the movements of the continents with arrows over the last 80 million years. Okay, so here we have North America, and North America actually ended up going to the west, right? So we'll put an arrow going that direction right there. So going to the west. South America ended up going to the northwest, and that is how it ended up sticking to North America and being really close to North America. Africa, India, and Australia all started moving to the northeast, right? But both Africa and Australia stopped while India just kept moving towards Asia, and that is how the Himalayas or the Himalayan mountains were formed, and that is how, the tallest mountain on Earth right now, Mount Everest, was formed, okay? And then we have Antarctica. Antarctica actually ended up moving all the way to the south, okay, you guys? So that was how the continents moved over the last 80 million years, okay? Simple stuff. Let's move on. So here we have exercise E. You will listen to students in a group discussion. Let me open this. Okay, you will listen to students in a group discussion. Complete the conversations below with questions from the box. Okay, so this is really similar to exercise B. So basically we're going to be listening to a conversation between some students, and we're just going to have to write the correct questions in each order. Okay, so here we go. Have a listen.
71. Exercise E1. Listen and check your answers.
There was only one continent 250 million years ago.
That's right. What was it called?
Pangaea, I think. It means all lands. What happened to Pangaea 200 million years ago?
It split into 2 parts.
Can you remember the names?
Yes. Laurasia and Gondwanaland.
What was the world like 85 million years ago?
Well, there were 7 continents, but they were in different places.
What changed in the next 50 million years?
North America moved away from Europe and Asia, and India moved towards Asia.
How can the continents move?
Well, the continents are on the crust, and the crust is above the mantle.
Right. And what's important about the mantle?
It's not solid. It's liquid.
Alright, you guys, so I actually ended up putting the questions as we went along. I figured that would be, the easier and more efficient way. But now I want to talk a little bit about actually that last part. And I know a lot of you have that same question. How on earth can continents move? I mean, they're solid, they're land. You can't, that's like telling someone to take his home from a country to another country. It's just impossible. Actually, let me tell you something. It's not. So, what does the crust mean and the mantle mean? If you guys remember in the listening section, we talked about the crust is that land on Earth, right? It's solid, it doesn't move. However, right under it, we have the mantle. And the mantle is actually kind of molten rocks, right? So it's like liquid. It's actually liquid. It's not like liquid. It's liquid. So it does move. However, it moves very slowly, and that is why when we talked about the figures in the previous exercise, I told you guys, when I wrote the dates down, I said 80 million years, 250 million years, 200 million years. Anything less than millions doesn't really affect anything. So the next time our continents start moving significantly, we'll all be dead. Me, my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, I don't know, they'll all be dead. I'm talking millions of years, you guys, okay? So continents move constantly. They just move at an extremely slow pace, right? And that is why you don't notice it. Okay, you guys? So, and actually I heard a good example, we just heard it in the audio, is that it's kind of thinking of it as putting, for example, a piece of stick, or not a piece of stick, a stick or a piece of wood on water. Obviously water moves much faster than the mantle, but it's kind of the same idea, right? So you put a stick on water and it'll eventually start moving around until it's no longer where you put it. Okay? Same thing with the crust and the mantle, except much, much slower. And that, my friends, is how the continents move. Okay? I hope I was able to clear that for you guys. Now, let's move on. Okay, what else do we have? Here we have the continents. Oh yeah, so we have the finals, or the final skills check. We have talking about the past, right? So obviously all of what we just talked about was obviously in the past. So how can we talk about the past exactly in English? So we can talk about the past 3 different ways. With a day or a date, with last and time period, or with a time period plus the word ago. And let me explain a little bit in the examples here. So we talked about the continents yesterday, right? Or on 11th July 2010, there was a total eclipse of the sun. That is one way to talk about the past, adding a day. So we talked about the continents yesterday. I talked to Mike yesterday, okay? Or I could simply say a date in the past. So on 11th of July 2010, there was a total eclipse of the sun. I'm still talking about the past. Okay? Now, let's go with number 2. We looked at eclipses last week, right? Adding the word last. Or I could also say a time period. So for example, last year I studied eclipses. So with adding the word last, I could probably say I could probably say I played soccer, last week. Last year I got 97, right? As in, marks or whatever. Okay? So you could use last and a specific time period. And then finally we have using a time period and using the word ago right after that. And that is why when we were actually doing exercise A, it was A or B, I think, yeah, we added the word ago because it was a question with a time period. So John Couch Adams discovered Neptune 165 years ago. See, I can't just say 165 years and stop. No, I gotta say ago to indicate that I'm talking about the past. Okay? So, John Couch Adams discovered Neptune 165 years ago. Okay? Or I could also say, 2 different styles here. 230 years ago, William Herschel discovered Uranus. Okay? And here we actually have what I was just saying. The time phrase can go at the beginning of the sentence or the end. So both are correct. You don't have to worry about that. Alright, you guys? So these are the 3 ways that we can talk about the past. Alright? Simple stuff. Now let's move on. Alright, you guys, now let's move on to lesson 3, vocabulary and pronunciation. Here we have exercise A. Let me open it for you. Look at figure 1. Are these sentences true or false? And he wants us to correct the false sentences. So here we have some sentences based on this figure right here, and we have some phrases. So we want to know if they're true or false, and if they're false, we want to correct the sentences over here. Okay, so let's go with number 1. So no, actually, before we do that, let's take a look at the figure. So here we have some planets of our solar system, not all of them. So we have Mars, Earth, Venus, and Mercury. And obviously, this is the Sun, right? Now, let's take a look at number 1. Mars is next to the Sun. We go down and check. Look at that. Mars is not close to the Sun. That's Mercury, right? So Mars is all the way back. So Mars is next to the Sun will be false. Okay, F. And now we gotta correct it, right? We gotta write the correct sentence. So what we're gonna say is Mercury is next to the Sun. Okay, you guys? So Mercury is next to the Sun. Now let's go to number 2. Mercury is next to Venus. Let's take a look. Where's Mercury? It's right here, and it is correct. It's next to Venus. That's correct. So we'll just write a T here. True. Number 3. Venus is between Mercury and the Earth. Here we have Venus, and that's true as well. It is between the Earth and Mercury. Okay, so a simple T will suffice. And then we have number 4. Mars is smaller than Mercury. Let's take a look. So here we have Mars, and here we have Mercury. And no, Mercury actually is smaller. So Mars is bigger, so that will be false. So F. And now we gotta correct it. So what are we gonna say, you guys? We're gonna say Mars is larger than Mercury. Okay? So Mars is smaller than Mercury. No, it's not. Mars is larger than Mercury. Here we have number 5. Venus is nearer to the Sun than the Earth is. And that is correct. Venus is closer to the Sun than Earth is. So that will be true. Number 6. The Earth is larger than Venus. And the Earth is larger than Venus. Can you guys take a closer look? I'm pretty sure the Earth is a little bit bigger. Okay, they look really similar, but the Earth just seems a tiny bit bigger. So we'll write that as true as well. Then we have number 7. The Earth is the largest planet in this group. Okay, so notice how he said in this group. So that means of these planets and not all the planets in the solar system. Okay, so we have Mars, Earth, Venus, and Mercury. And it seems that Earth is the biggest. So true as well. And finally, we have Venus is the smallest planet in this group. Venus is not the smallest planet. That title goes to Mercury. So that means that is false, and we're going to have to correct it. So what are we going to say, you guys? We're going to say Mercury is the smallest. That's it. Yeah, we can just stop here. Mercury is the smallest. Okay? Simple exercise. Now let's move on. Here we have exercise B. He wants us to work in pairs. So, grab a pair if you're in class. Okay? And find pairs of adjectives in the box opposite. Okay, so we have this box here, right? And it has different adjectives, but they're pairs. They're kind of opposite, right? So if I say long, short, cold, hot, these are opposites, okay? So we want to find these. So let's take a look. Here we have cold. So obviously the opposite of cold is hot, okay? Already found a pair. And then we have far. What is the opposite of far, you guys? That's correct. It's near. So far away, near, far, near. And then we have heavy. The opposite of heavy is obviously light. Light here means something that doesn't weigh too much, and not light as in, the sunlight, for example. Okay? So cold goes with hot. Far goes with near. Heavy goes with light. Hot, obviously cold. Okay? So cold, hot, again the same. Large goes with small, right? Opposite. What's the opposite of large? When you guys ask for, t-shirts, or I mean, large and small can have so many different meanings, okay? But or we could use the same pair for different items, okay? So large and small. And then we have, what else do we have? I think we've got them all, except maybe for short and long, okay? So these are the only two missing, so long and short. Okay, you guys? Now, let's see what number 2 wants. Match each pair of adjectives to a row of information. Okay, so let's take a look here at the bottom. Here, it looks like we have a table, right? And we have distance from the sun. So these are information about some of the planets, okay? And we want to use or try to measure the adjectives, or how we're going to use the adjectives with these words. For example, distance, diameter. So if I'm talking about the distance, you guys, what will I say? That's correct. We use far and near, okay? So I use these two adjectives, obviously opposites, when talking about distance. So far away and near when talking about distance. Now, what do I say when talking about diameter, right? I say large and small. When talking about diameter, you guys, I talk about it in if it's large and if it's small, okay? And here we have 1 year and 1 day. So when talking about 1 year or 1 day, I can talk about them saying they're long and they're short, right? So if I'm talking about 1 day or 1 year, I can say long and short, these two. I can't say a day is large, right? Because a day, how can a day be large? It's not possible, okay? And then we have weight. Everybody knows that weight is measured with being heavy and light. So when someone tells you, obviously this is not the same example here, but this is just a different example. If someone says you're starting to get heavy, that probably means that you're actually getting heavy. You are putting on more pounds or kilograms, okay? So weight is used with the adjectives heavy and light. And finally, temperature, right? So minimum temperature and maximum temperature, we use hot and cold, okay? These are literally the only two, adjectives that we use with temperature, okay? So it's either hot or cold, and that's about it, right? The lower you go, the colder it gets. The higher you go, the hotter it gets, okay? Simple stuff. Now, let's move to this pronunciation check here. Here we have saying superlative adjectives, and we know that for superlative adjectives, we add est, okay? But how do they sound exactly? How does that E make a sound when pronouncing our superlative adjectives, right? So we have the hottest, the largest, and the lightest, and I'm actually just going to play a quick audio for you guys, so you guys can check the pronunciation for yourselves, and then we'll move on. Here you go.
72. Lesson 3. Vocabulary and Pronunciation. Pronunciation check 1. Listen and check your pronunciation.
The hottest. The largest. The lightest. The coldest. The nearest. The hottest planet is Venus. The largest continent is Asia. Which suitcase is the lightest? January is usually the coldest month. Heathrow is the nearest airport to London.
Alright, so that's how you pronounce superlative adjectives in sentences. And yeah, that's about it. Let's now move to exercise E here. We're actually going to skip this one, okay? So we have study the conversation. Actually, before we do that, let me kind of talk about this pronunciation check 2 here. Here we have saying prepositions of place and movement, okay? So prepositions specific to place and movement, they have two styles. So prepositions in general, there are prepositions with only one syllable or first syllable, and prepositions with a second syllable, right? And you gotta make sure that you're saying the words and phrases with the correct stress. And I've talked about this before, even in the previous course, about how your stress when talking can make or break you, literally. People can take you seriously when talking with certain intonation and stress, and people can literally laugh at you, okay? So we have with first syllable, we have under, over, into, out of, next to. Obviously, I'm not adding stress right now. You guys will get that when I play the audio. Then we have second syllable, above. You guys can see the two syllables, above, behind, below, between, away from, towards. Okay, so let's take a listen here.
'73. Pronunciation check 2. Listen and repeat each sentence.
1,
The cafe is next to the bank.
2,
The lecture theatre is on the floor below.
3,
He usually comes out of the lecture a bit late.
4,
Why's she walking away from us?
5,
Look at the figure under the photo.
6,
I've parked my car behind the sports centre.
7,
We're going into town about 9 o'clock.
8,
The book's on the shelf above you.
Okay, you guys, so now let's move on. Now that we got these prepositions out of the way, we're gonna study a conversation below. Okay, so here we have a conversation between two people. And we're gonna listen and then check our answers, right? So we're gonna add prepositions here, and then as we go, we'll write them down. So first, I'm gonna let it play. I'm gonna also be writing the prepositions as we go, and then I'll be reading it for you guys. Okay, so here, have a listen.
74. Exercise E2. Listen and check your answers.
Where's the nearest bank?
It's near the park. Go down the hill.
Towards the city centre?
No, away from the centre. Go under the bridge and round the corner. It's between the post office and the supermarket.
Is there a car park?
Yes, the car park is behind the bank.
Can you park in the street?
Sometimes. There are some spaces in front of the supermarket.
Okay, you guys, so let me actually change this to a capital T because it's the beginning of a question. Now, let me read it for you. So, where's the nearest bank? It's near, preposition, the park, okay? Go down the hill, okay, towards the city center, asking a question. No, away, actually away, not a ways, away from the center. Go under the bridge and round the corner. It's between the post office and the supermarket. Is there a car park? Yes, the car park is behind the bank. Can you park behind the street? Sometimes. There are some spaces in front of the supermarket. Okay, you guys? What else do we have? Yeah, I think that's about it. So now let's move on to reading. Alright, you guys, now let's move on to lesson 4 reading. here we have exercise A, really simple exercise. Complete each word to make a list of geographic features. So these are all going to be words related to the subject geography, right? So number 1, we have sea. Number 2, we have mountain, okay? And then number 3, we have river. And then land. And what do we have after that? We have ocean. You guys know what an ocean is, right? And then we have island, okay, as a silent. Then number 7, beach. Oh, beach. Then we have desert. Then we have forest. And finally we have jungle. Okay? So sea, mountain, river, land, ocean, island, beach, desert, forest, and jungle. Okay? Now we have exercise B, do the quiz on the right. So we have this quiz right here. How good is your geography? Do your quiz and find out. So in this quiz we have some really nice questions, actually, I should say. So what is the longest river, the deepest lake, the largest ocean, the largest desert, the biggest continent, the smallest continent, the largest rainforest? Okay, so most of you probably do not know every single one of these answers or questions or answers to these questions. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to start reading here. But before we do that, I want you guys to just take a look at the heading and the introduction, right? And then, kind of like we said before in previous reading sections, just kind of take a second to think about what the text, what's the information that you'll probably find in the text later on, right? And then after that, we're going to continue reading, okay? So I suggest you pause the video first, do what I just said, and continue reading, and then play it again, and let's keep going, okay? So, the biggest, the longest, the deepest. How much do you know about the Earth? What is the biggest continent, the longest river, the deepest lake, and the largest ocean? Read on. The answer is not always clear. Continents. The largest continent in the world is Asia. It is 44.8 million square kilometers. Some people believe that the small continent is Australia, or the smallest continent is Australia at 7.7 million square kilometers. However, many reference books and websites say that Australia is not a continent. It is part of the continent of Oceania. These sources say that Oceania, including Australia, is the smallest continent. It contains thousands of islands, but the total area is only 8 million square kilometers. Rivers. Some websites say that the longest river in the world is the Nile, with the length of around 6,650 kilometers. These websites say that the Amazon is shorter at 6,400. Other people measure the Amazon at 6,992 kilometers and the Nile at 6,853. However, all reference books and websites agree that the largest river is the Amazon. It sends 219,000 cubic meters of water into the Atlantic Ocean every second. The Nile is much smaller, at 5,100 cubic meters per second. The Amazon is also the widest river in the world. Lakes. The largest lake in the world is not called a lake. It is the Caspian Sea in Asia and Europe. It has an area of 371,000 square kilometers. The deepest lake is Lake Baikal in Siberia. It has an average depth of 630 meters, but its deepest point is 1,637 meters. Scientists say that Lake Baikal contains 20% of the world's unfrozen fresh water. Oceans. The Pacific Ocean is the biggest ocean in the world. It covers almost a third of the Earth's surface. It stretches from the Arctic in the north to Antarctica in the south. It is divided into the North Pacific and the South Pacific. Researchers say that the deepest part of the Pacific is south of Japan. It is the Mariana Trench with a depth of 10,924 meters. The smallest ocean is the Arctic Ocean. At 13,223,800 square kilometers, it is 10 times smaller than the Pacific. Okay, so now that we read the text in the different parts of Earth, the continents, lakes, rivers, and oceans, let's go back to our quiz actually. So here we have exercise B, the quiz, and let's read the questions. So we have, what is the longest river? And we talked about this. It was not fixed. In text it said that, some people believe that the Amazon, depends on how you measure it, the Amazon is the longest, and other people say it's the Nile. So we'll just have to write both down. So, Nile and Amazon. Okay, and then we have, what's the deepest lake? It's Lake Baikal in Siberia. So we'll just write that down, Baikal. Then we have the largest ocean. This one's known. It's the Pacific. So Pacific Ocean. Then we have the largest desert. And guys, believe it or not, this is not actually mentioned in the text at all. So we didn't even see the word desert in the text. But I know this one, it's it's just one of those pieces of information that I've had in the back of my mind since forever. So the largest desert is the Sahara, you guys. Okay? Sahara Desert, Sahara, the largest desert. And then we have, what's the biggest continent, you guys? That's correct. It's Asia, right? We just read that in the text in the beginning. Asia is the biggest continent. And what's the smallest continent? Do you guys know? Well, we have two options. A lot of people say Australia, but other people say that Australia is actually not a continent and it's just part of Oceania, and that Oceania is the smallest continent. So it just depends on how you feel. I mean, we'll probably just say Oceania. Okay, Oceania. And I did not write the A down, Oceania, and we'll probably say I-N-K, or I should write that in I-N-K, okay, and then write Australia. And what that I-N-K stands for is including Australia, just because the text said it that way, right? So Oceania, including Australia. And finally, we have the largest rainforest. The largest rainforest, and I actually know this one, it's also the Amazon. So the largest rainforest is the Amazon. Okay, so the longest river, debate between Nile or Amazon, the deepest lake, Baikal, the largest ocean, the Pacific Ocean, the largest desert, Sahara, the biggest continent, Asia, the smallest continent, Oceania, including Australia, and the largest rainforest, the Amazon. Okay, you guys? Simple stuff. Let's move on. Okay, so look at the text opposite. So that's why I told you guys to do what you guys should have done. I hope all of you were able to do that. I hope you paused the video and you read the introduction and the heading, and basically you took a couple minutes just to think a little bit about what's to come in the text. So read the heading and the introduction, which topics in the quiz are in the text. Okay, so now that we just finished the quiz, go back and think of what are the things that are mentioned in the quiz that are actually found in the text. Okay, so now before we move on, let's go to dealing with long sentences, skills check 2 here. So sentences sometimes begin with an introductory phrase, and I think this one's pretty self-explanatory, you guys. Introductory phrase comes from the word introduction, basically something that starts with an introduction. So we have an example. Some websites say that, obviously, giving an introduction to what I'm about to say. So I don't say the longest river in the world is the Nile. I'm going to start with a brief introduction, nothing fancy. Some websites say that, that's an introduction, the longest river in the world is the Nile, okay? All reference books agree that, that's an introductory phrase, the Amazon is the largest river, okay? So look for the word that at the end of the introductory phrase. The subject of the sentence is the next word. Okay, so you guys see this that word here? Anything after that and before the verb is called the subject of the sentence, right? So all reference books agree that, that's an introductory phrase, the Amazon, so the Amazon is the subject of our sentence. Okay, you guys? However, sometimes writers do not use that. So that you guys saw, it's not always used at the end of the introductory phrase. So researchers believe, you know, you could say that or you cannot. Both are correct. The experiment showed, Aristotle thought. Okay, so we're actually going to have an exercise about this in a second. So we got to learn to recognize introductory phrases, right? Being able to find the subject and the verb after finding the introductory phrase. Okay? So now let's go to exercise E here. Look at the highlighted sentences in the text. Give it a second. Here we go. So look at the sentences from the text. Here we have, you know, some sentences. Find and underline the introductory phrases. So we're going to underline the introductory phrases, you guys, of every sentence. And then we're going to circle the subject of the sentence. And finally, we're going to highlight the verb in yellow. Okay? So let's start with number 1. Some people believe that, okay, that's an introductory phrase, right? So I'm just going to underline this. The smallest continent, that's the subject, okay, is obviously, that's our verb. So yeah, that's all I need. Australia at 7.7 million square kilometers. So some people believe that, that's our introductory phrase. The smallest continent, subject, is our verb. Okay? Now let's move on. However, many reference books and websites say that, and I'm going to stop right here. So I'm going to actually, I don't want however, but I could use it. So I'm going to use this as an introductory phrase. So however, many reference books and websites say that Australia is the only subject. That's the only word that's the subject in our sentence. Okay? So Australia, the subject of our sentence, is our verb, not a continent. Okay, you guys? It's really simple. You just got to get the hang of it. Just like playing a video game. You got to teach your brain how to recognize the introductory phrases and, you know, finding the subject and finally getting the verb. Okay? Now, let's move on. Here we have, these sources say that, and I'm going to stop right here. I have that, so I'm going to stop. Okay? I'm going to underline this because, like I said, introductory phrase. Oceania, that's the subject. Found that. And I actually, can I not get it? Has one. So, you guys, I didn't. Okay, so this is a mistake that I just did, and I don't want you to fall for it. Next time, read the whole thing before you actually start solving, because like you see, you know, this one's pretty simple for me, but yet I still made that mistake of not continuing the sentence. So if you actually continue the sentence, Oceania, including Australia, is. So I thought that the verb was right after Oceania. Turns out including Australia was also there as well. So Oceania, including Australia, is gonna be our subject. Okay? So these sources say that, introductory phrase, simple. Oceania, including Australia, that's our subject. Okay? And finally, is right here, is our verb. Okay, you guys? I don't know, that one really messed me up. I don't know why. It's really simple. Anyway, we have some websites say that. I'm going to stop right here again, underline it. Okay, introductory phrase. the longest river in the world, and I'm going to stop because I have an is right after. So the longest river in the world, that's our subject, is the Nile. So I'll just do this right here. Oh, is the Nile. Okay, so is will be our verb. Okay, you guys? Now let's move to the next one. These websites say that, again, I'm going to underline it because that's our introductory phrase. The Amazon is shorter at 6,400. So the Amazon, I'm going to circle that and then I'll stop. That's the subject. Is verb. And here, like so. Okay, is shorter. Okay. However, all reference books and websites agree that, and yeah, after that, I'm gonna stop. Okay, agree that. So, however, let me actually circle the, not circle, underline it. That's our introductory phrase. The largest river, so that's our subject, is our verb, the Amazon. Okay. Scientists say that Lake Baikal contains 20% of the world's unfrozen freshwater. Okay, so we gotta stop after that. You guys see how early that was? So scientists say that, I'm gonna actually underline this introductory phrase, Lake Baikal contains 20% of the world's unfrozen fresh water. So Lake Baikal, I'm gonna actually, this is our subject, contains is our verb, okay? So contains will be our verb, and the rest is history, okay? And finally, we have researchers say that, again, gonna underline this, the deepest part of the Pacific is south of Japan. The deepest part of the Pacific, I'm gonna circle that, and is our verb, okay? I know it can be a little tough in the beginning. I personally made a mistake just now a little bit, a while ago, okay? But it takes time, trust me. It's like playing a video game, solving a mathematical equation. It just takes time, and you'll get the hang of it in no time, okay? Now, let's move on. Okay, so here you guys, we have exercise F. And just before I hop in there, because this will have, just some talking in general. So before that, let's go to skills check 2 here. Here we have superlative adjectives. Okay, and we talked about superlative adjectives before, but now the long adjectives of superlative adjectives. So what do I do with long adjectives to turn them into superlative adjectives? Okay, so we put the word most in front of the adjective. So interesting, the most interesting. Okay, so I don't say just most, I say the most interesting. Remember when I wanted to turn long adjectives into comparative adjectives? I'd just say more, right? So more interesting, more surprising. Okay, now I have to add the most interesting or the most surprising, obviously with long adjectives, to turn them into superlative adjectives. Okay, you guys? So interesting, again, the most interesting. Surprising, the most surprising. Okay? Now, talk about the text. What is the most interesting or surprising piece of information? So that right here would require that you have read the text, right? I mean, you can't talk about it if you haven't read it. So for you personally, obviously this answer will vary from student to student. What do you think is the most interesting or surprising piece of information? And for me personally, it's got to be the part here about the rivers where they compare the Amazon and Nile, but you got different people having different measurements, and they just didn't come to a conclusion in the end. They just said both of them, right? So they said either the Amazon or the Nile. When we do different calculations, different results come up. So that was, for me, interesting and actually surprising as well. I always thought that the Amazon was the longest, the biggest, the widest, everything basically. But now I'm not so sure. I guess the Nile is still up there. Okay? So that was, for me, the most interesting and surprising piece of information. Tell me your answers below, and I'll see you in the next one. Alright, you guys, now let's move on to lesson 5, writing and grammar. Here we have exercise A. Study the letters in the front column below, then add letters to make an adjective and a noun. Okay, so here we have these incomplete words, and we want to find the full word, so it's going to be an adjective, and then we want to find its noun, right? So what's the first word, you guys? Let me give you a hint. It's based on mathematics, right? So the word is going to be wide, okay? And what's the noun of wide, you guys? That's correct. It's width, okay? So wide, width. What's number 2? Number 2 is long, okay? And its noun becomes length, okay? So long, length. Then we have deep, okay? Double E, and its noun becomes depth. Okay, so long, length, deep, depth. And then we have strong, and its noun becomes strength. Okay, so strong, strength. And finally, we have high, and noun of that becomes height. Okay, so wide, width, long, length, deep, depth, strong, strength, high, and height. Okay, adjectives and nouns. Now look at table 1 and 2. Here we have exercise B. We got to find a pattern between the two, so let me actually open this. Okay, so here we have table 1. You can see he's talking about the area, right? So here we have L stands for length, H stands for height, and right after that we have, obviously because table 1 says area, so we'll just write probably like an A here, okay? And then words. So 6 meters is the length, 4 meters is the height, and 24 square meters is the area, okay? And then we have number 2, 10 kilometers is the length, okay? And then we have, what is that, 5? Okay, so we'll go a little bit more to mathematics. So when going upwards, that's called the height, and when going this way, so sideways, we call it the length. Okay, so length 10 kilometers, 5 kilometers is the height, and 50 kilometers or square kilometers is the area. So we'll just write down 50, okay, in words. So yeah, and then we have 3 centimeters, that's the height, and here we'll write down 20 centimeters, okay, because that's the length. 60 centimeters squares, or square centimeters. I mean, both are correct. It just depends on how you say it. So square centimeters or centimeters squares. Now we have table 2. Now he's talking a little bit more about the volume. Okay, so we have the length 6 meters, height 2 meters, width 4 meters, and finally we have the volume 48 cubic meters. Okay, now let's go to the second one. So we can see that length is 10 kilometers right here, and then we have height is 3 kilometers, so we'll write that down. Going upwards again, that's the height. Then we have width right here, that's 5 kilometers. And finally we have 150 cubic kilometers. Okay, so we'll have to write that down. So we'll just say 100, forgot the U, 150 cubic kilometers. Okay, you guys? Now let's go to number 3. This one's it's really simple, the same thing. So length 20 centimeters. Here you can see the length, so 20 centimeters. Height 3 centimeters. Width 2 centimeters. Okay, and the volume will be 120, what is it, you guys? Cubic centimeters, not meters. Okay, cubic is when you have a 3, okay, and that is the unit of measurement for volume. While here in the first table, the area, we have square. A square is basically when you have that power 2 on top, and that is the unit of measurement for area. Okay, so square used for area, and then you have volume, and we use cubic, so 3. Okay, that power 3. All right, you guys. Now let's move on. What do we have here? we have exercise C. Write a sentence for each drawing below. Use patterns from the skills check. Okay, let me actually open this. Okay, so here we have the skills check describing size. Okay, so we have different ways to talk when describing size, right? So here we have some examples. This is a box or a square. It covers 50 million square kilometers. That's one way to talk about size. Okay, it has 50, or it not has, it is 50 kilometers long. Or I could also say it has a length of 50 kilometers. I could also say it is 500 meters deep. It has a depth, you guys see, adjective and noun, it has a depth of 500 meters. It is 5k meters high. It has a height of 5,000 meters. And finally, it contains 50 million cubic kilometers, okay? And you got to be careful, because when you're talking about these units of measurement, you got to be careful with the units themselves. So for example, you got to pronounce them correctly. So meters, centimeters, kilometers, kilometers square, cube, kilometers, and so on, okay? Now, here we have Asia, right? And Asia is a really big continent. It's the biggest continent in the world. So we'll say, number one, Asia covers 44.8 million square kilometers, right? So here we have number two. Now we're talking about the Nile, okay? So the Nile, I'll probably say is, okay? So the Nile is 6,825 kilometers. What is that, you guys? Long, okay? I gotta use the correct words, so long, okay? And then after that, I have the Amazon. So I'll say the Amazon is 11 kilometers dash at the coast. What is it? You guys know this. That's correct. It's wide, okay? So the Amazon is 11 kilometers wide at the coast, okay? And then we have Lake Baikal, okay? So Lake Baikal, again, is 1,637 meters. What is that? It's a lake, so what's it going to be? That's correct. It's going to be deep, okay? That's how you measure it. So Lake Baikal is 1,637 meters deep. Okay, you guys? Really simple, really fun exercise as well. Now, let's move on. Okay, so here we have exercise D. Look at the tables. Oh, let me actually open this. So, what do we use superlative adjectives for, you guys? So, do we use superlative adjectives to talk about one thing, to compare two things, or to compare many things? What do you guys think? That's correct. We use it to compare many things, okay? Unlike comparative. Comparative adjectives are used to compare between two things only, while superlative adjectives are used to compare many things, okay? Now, here we have to complete the tables, right? So here we have different tables, and we got to complete them with the accurate superlative adjectives and the verb, okay? So let's go with number one. The Amazon dash dash widest river in the world. I'm going to say the Amazon is, right? And then I'll say the widest river in the world. The Rockies obviously plural, so I'll say are the highest, what is it, you guys? The highest mountains. That's correct. So mountains in North America. Okay? And then we have table 2 here. Hydrogen dash 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 common gas in the solar system. So I'll say hydrogen is the most, that's correct, most common gas in the solar system. Red diamonds, plural, so I'll use are. Red diamonds are the most expensive jewels on Earth. So that's how you complete the table. Okay? That's simple. Now let's move on. We have, let me actually open this as well. So we have make the superlative sentences into yes or no questions. Okay, so now we're going to turn these sentences into yes or no questions. And do you guys remember? It's really simple. You guys remember how to make yes or no questions? Okay, let's start with number 1. The Amazon is the widest river in the world. So we're going to say, is the Amazon, right, the widest river in the world? Question mark, right? That's how you say it. And then let's go with number 2. The Rockies are the highest mountains in North America. I'll probably say, are the Rockies the highest mountains in North America, right? That's second. So are the Rockies the highest mountains in North America? Is the Amazon the widest river in the world? Okay, that is how you say it. And then what do we have with table 2? Hydrogen is the most common gas in the solar system. So turning that into a yes or no question, I can say, is hydrogen the most common gas in the solar, or actually let me put that in capital, solar system? Question mark. Is hydrogen the most common gas in the solar system? Okay. And then finally we have red diamonds are the most expensive jewels on Earth. So if I'm gonna say that, I'm gonna say it here as well. I'll probably say are, because plural, are red diamonds the most expensive jewels on Earth? And then question mark. Okay, so are red diamonds the most expensive jewels on Earth? Okay, now he wants us for number 4 to make the superlative sentences into what questions? Okay, so WH questions. So now we're not going to be making yes or no questions, we're going to be making WH questions. And so basically what? We're going to be using the word what. So we have, what is the widest river in the world? Is the Amazon the widest? Okay, so we did the first one again. So here we have an example of the first one. The Amazon is the widest river in the world. What is the widest river in the world? Okay, so for number 2, the Rockies are the highest mountains in North America. So for that, I'll probably say, what are the highest mountains in North America? Right, you guys? So, question mark. So what are the highest mountains in North America? So after that, we have table 2. Hydrogen is the most common gas in the solar system. And for that, I could say, what is the most common gas in the solar system? Right, you guys? So what is the most common gas in the solar system? And finally, we have red diamonds are the most expensive jewels on Earth. So for that, we'll probably say, what are the most expensive jewels on Earth? And let me put that in capital, Earth. Okay? So what are the highest mountains in North America? What is the most common gas in the solar system? And what are the most expensive jewels on Earth? Okay? So now that we're done with that, let's move on. What do we have? So these are really simple. You guys should do this on your own because it's something about your country. So make sure you're honest and true about it. Okay? So complete these sentences with something true about your country. I'm not honestly, like, I don't know much about my country or geography, like, at all. And for just knowing random information is not my thing. So we'll just cruise through this, but I hope you guys pause the video and answer every single one with research if you can, okay? So dash is the longest river in my country. I'll say the Nile. So the Nile is the longest river in my country. Is the largest lake? No idea at all. So is the highest mountain? Don't know that as well. Is the oldest town or city? Probably Cairo, but don't quote me on that. Okay. Is the biggest city in my country? Again, probably Cairo. Is the wettest month in my country? Probably January. And is the hottest month in my country July? Hands down, July is really hot. So July is the hottest month in my country. Okay. Now, let's go to number 7 here. Complete these sentences with your own opinion and begin with I think that. Okay, so now this is going to be entirely up to you again. So answers for all of these. So from number 5 to 8, all of these are going to be you. You know, answers depend on the student and not anyone else. Okay, so complete these sentences again with your own opinion. I think that. So I think that dash is the most interesting book in my language. I'm really not too sure. I don't read Arabic books, so I don't know about that. But yeah, so is the most important person in my country. I don't think I have an opinion for that, because there are a lot of people in my country that are considered important, and that without them, you know, things would not be running the way they are now. Okay, and then for C, we have is the most useful website on the internet. This is obviously subject to different opinions, so I think that I'll probably say YouTube is the most useful website on the internet. That website is insane. Okay, is the most beautiful place in my country. Probably, I don't know, the tower in Cairo. That's a great place. I found it really cool and beautiful. So yeah. Is the most difficult subject at school, university? Physics. No questions asked. I don't like physics. So I think that physics is the most difficult subject at school / university. Dash is the most dangerous animal in the world. Probably crocodiles. Yeah, crocodiles are really dangerous. Be careful. And finally, we have is the most exciting sport in the world. So obviously this is going to be subject to change depending on where you live. So someone in the United States probably doesn't watch as much soccer as probably the rest of the world. So we'll go with soccer or football. So I think that soccer is the most exciting sport in the world. Okay? Obviously these will be based on your answers. These are just my answers, which is why I didn't give them, you know, complete detail. So yeah, do some research, write them down, and let's move on. Alright, you guys, so here we have the continuation of lesson 6, writing and grammar. So let's just hop right in. We have exercise A. Make the words into sentences about geographic features in different countries and continents. Okay, so these sentences are in, you know, messed up order, and we're gonna have to, you know, make them, you know, sentences that are understandable. Okay, so Yangtze Long River, China. We can say the Yangtze, right? Yangtze is the longest river in China. Okay, so the Yangtze is the longest river in China. The Mariana Trench, deep part, Pacific Ocean. So for that, we'll say the Mariana Trench. Let me write that down. The Mariana Trench is the deepest part of, forgot the T, part of the Pacific Ocean. Okay? So the Mariana Trench is the deepest part of the Pacific Ocean. Then we have number 3, the Dead Sea, Jordan, low point, Earth. So we can say the Dead Sea, I wrote it as dad. Okay, so the Dead Sea, okay, let me write that in capital. The Dead Sea in Jordan is the lowest point on Earth. Alright, then we have Victoria, Big Lake, Africa. So for that I'll say Victoria is the biggest lake in Africa. Okay, and finally we have number 5, Oceania, small continent on Earth. So for that we'll say Oceania is the smallest continent on Earth. Okay, you guys, let me write that A down. Okay, so Oceania is the smallest continent on Earth. Now let's move on. Here we have exercise B. Study the two sentences below. Okay, so what do you guys notice? So we have Kivu is the highest lake in Africa. And other sentence says the highest lake in Africa is Kivu. Okay, so you guys remember finding out the subject and the verb and the complement. So now we're going to do that. So what is the subject of each sentence? What do you guys think? That's correct. For number 1, it's Kivu, because right after that we have a verb. So Kivu is the subject. What about the second one? That's correct. The highest lake in Africa, that's the subject. So literally opposites. So Kivu and the highest lake in Africa. What is the verb? The verb is in the two sentences, so is and is. What is the complement for both? Again, opposites. So we'll say for number 1, we have the highest lake in Africa is the complement, and for number 2, it's actually Kivu. Okay? Do the two sentences give the same information? And what do you guys think? Do these two sentences give the same information? Yes, they do. They give the same information. It's just reversed. Okay? But same information. Okay, so take a look at skills check now. We have reversing subject and complement, right? So we can reverse the subject and complement as shown in that exercise in sentences with a definite complement. Okay, so not an indefinite complement, that won't work, but with a definite complement. Okay, so the two sentences basically have the same exact meaning, no difference. It's just the subject and complement are reversed. So here's another example. We have the Sahara is the largest desert in the world. Or I could also say the largest desert in the world is the Sahara. You see the difference? But still the same exact meaning. But take note that we cannot reverse. This process will not work with an indefinite complement. Complement. So for example, Russia is a country. I cannot switch things up and start saying country is a Russia. No, that won't work. Okay? So only with definite complement. Now, here we have exercise C. Okay, these are the sentences from exercise A, and we want to change them, or I should say reverse the order of the subject and complement in the sentence. So, the Yangtze is the longest river in China. If I'm going to switch it, I'm going to say, or not longest, I'm going to say the longest river in China is let me write that in capital, Yangtze. Okay? And full stop. Same exact meaning. The longest river in China is the Yangtze. Number 2, the Mariana Trench is the deepest part of the Pacific Ocean. I could say the deepest part of the Pacific Ocean, right, is the Mariana Trench. Okay, same exact meaning again. The Dead Sea in Jordan is the lowest point on Earth. I could say the lowest point on Earth is, or I should write that in small, the Dead Sea, right? So the Dead Sea, let me get rid of one E, the Dead Sea in Jordan. Okay, so the lowest point on Earth is the Dead Sea in Jordan. And not finally, number 4, we have Lake Victoria is the biggest lake in Africa. So I could say the biggest lake in Africa. In Africa is Victoria. That's correct. Okay, so the biggest lake in Africa is Victoria. And finally, we have Oceania is the smallest continent on Earth. And we could say, again, the smallest continent on Earth is Oceania. Okay, you guys? So that is how you reverse the order of the subject and complement in a sentence. Okay? Now let's move on. Okay, so you guys know, read the sentences and questions, and we gotta circle the correct word or phrase in each case. So here we have number 1, the nearest planet to the Sun dash Mercury. So is, just normal is, I don't need to say it is, okay, is Mercury. Lake Baikal is a length of 640 kilometers or 640 kilometers long. That's correct. We're going to say 640 kilometers long. Then we have number 3. It is dash in the world. So it is the deepest lake in the world. Okay? The Himalayas appeared not before 250 or 25 million years, 25 million years ago. You guys remember the word ago? We talked about this. Then we have number 5. How long or when ago did the Himalayas appear? And for that we'll use how long ago. Okay? Here we have some websites, not tell that, say that Australia is a continent. So not tell that. I can't say some websites tell that Australia is a continent. It's say that. Okay? We have number 7. How short or tall are you? It's how tall are you? Okay? How tall are you? Then we have number 8. The Earth is next Mars and Venus, and or between two things, right? So Mars and Venus. Then we have 9. The train went below or under the bridge. The train went under the bridge. Okay? And finally, number 10, we have the supermarket is next to or near to the bank. The supermarket is next to the bank. Okay, you guys? This is a really simple exercise. Now, let's move on. Oh, so here we have read the encyclopedia text about islands and complete the island information. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this short encyclopedia, but instead of completing the island column, I'm going to be asking you guys questions, and I want you to pause the video and answer me, right? I will be saying the answer shortly after, but I want you to pause the video for a second and answer me, okay? So here we go. Islands. Some encyclopedias say that the largest island in the world is Australia. It is in the southern hemisphere. It covers 7.7 million square kilometers. However, some websites say that Australia is not called an island because it is not a continent. These websites say that Greenland is the largest island. It has an area of 2.2 million square kilometers. The youngest island in the world is Surtsey near Iceland in the North Atlantic Ocean. It covers 3.2 square kilometers. It appeared above the sea 40 years ago, as of January 2010. Okay, so now I'm going to ask you guys some questions. Let's start. How big is Australia, you guys? That's correct. It's 7.7 million square kilometers. Okay? And where is it? Obviously, Australia. Where is Australia? That's correct. It's in the southern hemisphere. Okay? And why do some websites say that it's not an island? Can anyone tell me that? Because they say, the websites say that It's a continent, okay? So, what's the world's second largest island after Australia? That's correct, Greenland. And what's the world's youngest island? It's Surtsey, yes. And where is Surtsey? Yeah, it's near Iceland in the North Atlantic, okay? And finally, how big is Surtsey? That's correct. It's 3.2 square kilometers. Okay? So this is the style I wanted to show you guys when reading encyclopedias and getting questions. Okay? So that was Unit 5, you guys. Hope you had fun. Hope it was not too bad. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.